The name of the subject is microprocessors and microcontrollers. Subject code is CS341, and you know that almost all the subjects are of 3 credit course. So, this is also a 3 credit course. And books, the 2 textbooks, mostly we shall follow these books. One is Microprocessor 8085 by R.S. Gaonkar, right, and Microprocessor 8086 Douglas and Hull. In addition to this, I will tell some of the books in due course, mostly in the second or third class. I will tell the exact the books which you are to follow. In fact, there are a large number of books available for microprocessors and microcontrollers, and you cannot follow each and every book. So, therefore, we have to choose judiciously that which books will be compatible and suitable for your study. Therefore, but initially we choose these 2 books are the standard books, standard, or you can say the traditional books for the microprocessor and microcontroller. And microprocessor and microcontroller is a very traditional subject. Traditional subject in the sense that even before the digital computer came to the market, so these subjects were there. So, before the digital computer is available in the market, the microprocessor and microcontrollers concept was there. Or you can say when we saw the personal computer towards 1980s, microprocessor in fact started from 1950s or 60s, 50s and 60s. Or you can say the digital computer is an application of the microprocessor or microcontroller. Any kind of digital computer you see, even nowadays the mobile systems are also called the digital computers. Whatever you can do in a digital computer, many things, most of things can be done by the mobile phones. And the heart of the mobile phone is a microprocessor. The heart of a digital computer is a microprocessor, or heart of any computing device in the world is a microprocessor. Even in the car if you take, or train you take, or flight you take, wherever digitalization is there or electronics is there, and to make the electronics devices more intelligent, we need a microprocessor. So, microprocessor is the main heart of most of the devices or most of the applications today. Now, thing is that how microprocessor plays an important role in designing and manufacturing a computer, digital computer, or any device, any computing device. In general, we can say nowadays almost all the devices are computing devices. So, to design and manufacture a computing device, we need the help of a microprocessor, right. And microprocessor and microcontroller is a very practical subject, because reading theory or the theory and practical, they go in hand in hand. Suppose there is no concept in microprocessor, that is there is no practical corresponding practical either device or the software. So, to know what kind of software you should use whenever microprocessor and microcontroller subject is read. So, in fact, there are 2 components associated with the microprocessor and microcontroller. One is hardware component, another is software component. So, the hardware component is most of the things what we are going to cover in this syllabus are the hardware components, very less software, because to address the software component issues, we have another subject called embedded system. So, we can say that embedded system is a subject which is established on the top of a microprocessor or microcontroller, right. So, most of the syllabus whatever we are going to discuss in this class, they are all mostly hardware, but without software we cannot complete the hardware, because these are the programmable devices, they are not the static devices like a resistor or a capacitor. So, there is no need of programming a capacitor or resistor or a circuit, but here microprocessors are programmable devices. they are software driven. We have to execute a program using a microprocessor. Therefore, software cannot be ignored to understand the hardware concept of the microprocessor. Now, the question comes, what is a software? So, software in a very general definition, we know that set of programs. Any set of programs we call a software, but this set of programs must be written in a language, and there are three levels of language. One we call high level language, that already you have covered: C, C++, Java, Pascal, etc. So, they are all high level language. Why they are called high level language? Because they are following the first thing, that they are following the English alphabet A to Z, and second thing, they are very much machine independent. we don't need to know the machine configuration, what kind of machine we are using while developing the program in high level language. Then second level of language we call assembly language, and the third one is called machine language. So, machine language more or less everybody knows that only we deal with two alphabets, one is 0, another is 1, or 2 bits, 0 is a bit, 1 is a bit, which we call a machine language. But there are a lot of disadvantages in the machine language. What are the major disadvantages? Number one, whenever you write this program using machine language, even if you try to follow after some few hours, you cannot follow what you have written, because you cannot remember the corresponding meaning associated with a machine language code. So, that is a you can say that is a demerit of the machine language. Therefore, the programmers always feel the difficulties in writing the machine language. But when the microprocessor came to the market, the first language was the machine language, and it lasted for around 20 to 30 years. The scientists, engineers, in business, everywhere the people used to write the machine code, not the assembly code, not the high level language code. High level language codes or the alphabets, they came much after the machine language, right. So, due to these demerits of the machine language, the scientists or engineers thought that why will not go for some mnemonics, some kind of symbols. For example, for add I am writing 0101. This is the machine language code for addition. So, instead of writing 0101, let me write ADD. So, ADD becomes a mnemonics or a symbol for the code 0101. Then some scientists, they suggest, no, we don't have patience to write 3 letters, because when you write a big program, you have to write ADD every time. So, let us make it A, right. So, likewise this mnemonics, the concept of mnemonics came, but there is a one-to-one correspondence between the machine code and every code written in the assembly language. So, this set of mnemonics which are having corresponding code to their machine language codes are called the assembly language codes or assembly language programs. Otherwise, there is no difference between assembly language and the machine language, right. So, this assembly language is usually one level higher than the machine language, as you see from this. So, one is easier for scientists or the designers, another is difficult to write, but the other one, the machine language code, is easier for the machine and difficult for the users or the designers. So, initially what the designer suggests that they will write the programs in assembly language, and finally when the assembly language is ready, it can be converted to the machine language before executing on the system. Am I clear? And then who is going to convert this? That is, we need another software. So, which will take the assembly language program as the input and will produce the corresponding machine language. Am I right? So, this assembler is again a software, or we call the translator. So, this translator need not be written in the assembly language. You can also write in the high level language. Though you are converting an assembly language to machine language, so the assembler need not be written in the assembly language. But after the machine language, the assembly language concept came. high level language concept came much after 10 years 20 years later. So, during that period the people used to develop the assembler using the assembly language, right. But one demerit of this assembly language and machine language is that they are very much machine dependent. They, unless you know the machine configuration, so you cannot write the assembly language. So, in this sense we can say that assembly language and machine language both are specific to the machine. For every machine it varies. So, every machine I mean for one particular machine, if the same type of machine you are manufacturing multiple copies, then there is no variance in the assembly language. But if you are going from one machine configuration to another machine configuration and which is designed and manufactured by another company, another industry, then the assembly language and machine language has to change. And whenever the microprocessor systems and the assembly language, machine language concept came, many industries throughout the world came forward to design and manufacture the microprocessors and the assembly language and machine language. And one of the industry almost has dominated the world in the last 80 years, that is called Intel. So, Intel Corporation has almost dominated the world for manufacturing the digital computer using the microprocessor designed by himself or by Intel. So, Intel team succeeded in popularizing the concept of microprocessor. So, in order to compete Intel, so many microprocessor industries came to the market. So, one competent of the Intel is Motorola, right. Another one is Zilog. So, these are the competition at that point of time, and nowadays you will get 200 types of industries, more than 200 types of industries they are manufacturing the microprocessor. But till today also we can say Intel is the best in manufacturing the microprocessor for digital computer, only for digital computer, not for other applications. But there are like some mobile phones manufactured by Motorola, so they use their own microprocessors. So, for some specific applications or specific devices, the Motorola, Zilog and Texas Instrument, so many types. Nowadays also last 2-3 years we are seeing that Arduino, Atmel, Raspberry Pi. So, they are also the designers and manufacturers of the microprocessors, right. So, therefore, the course from the beginning itself, the course almost was the syllabus was almost dominated by the Intel series of microprocessors, and Intel series of microprocessors are named with these values. So, there is no specific meaning why it is 8085, it is just given by the Intel designers 8085, 8086, and mostly this 8085 was the first commercial microprocessor used for the industry, not for the digital computer. It was targeted to be used in the industry for process control applications, right. So, when the people thought that there should be a microprocessor for a digital computer, they thought of developing 8086. But again it was seen that 8086 was also mostly used by the industries, not by the digital computer people. So, they always tried to modify the microprocessor to make it suitable for the digital computer. So, they developed another microprocessor called 8088, which is almost similar to 8086, and this is the first microprocessor which was used for the digital computer or a digital personal computer. So, after 8088, this is the first PC, first personal computer when it came to the market towards 1980s or 82s. In 1982, first we saw a microcomputer or personal computer or digital computer whose microprocessor is 8088. Then because of several limitations of 8088, they thought of developing or upgrading this microprocessor to another microprocessor called 80186 with some additional features, and what features are added that we are going to study in detail, right. So, when 186 came to the market, so unfortunately before 80186 marketed or sold in the market, another microprocessor was already almost ready, or hardly 3 to 4 months 80186 came to the society or market. So, after that they thought that there is a drastical change in the design and configuration of the microprocessor, for which they got another microprocessor called 80286, which is much more powerful than 8088. Am I clear? So, now 80286 lasted for around 5 to 10 years towards 90s, because I told that 1982 we saw the first digital computer in the market. In 90 we got 80286. Then after 5 years we got another microprocessor called 386 with additional features. And what additional features, that we have to study in detail. There are mostly all the additional features are categorized into 5 types, and all 5 types we are going to discuss in the class in detail, right. Then 80486 came after 5 years. Every 5 years we change, we see there is a change in the concept of the microprocessor. So, then credit goes to whom? The credit goes to VLSI development, because initially we started from SSI integration, small scale integration. Then we came to MSI, that is medium scale integration. Then we came to LSI, large scale integration. Then we came to VLSI. Then we got SLSI, and then we got ALSI, ultra large scale integration, right. So, how this development took place? So, initially if I assume that if 100 transistors were implemented in a single IC in SSI, now millions and billions of transistors are available in a single IC of the same area, what we are using for SSI. So, because of ULSI, VLSI technology, these are all the variant of the VLSI technology. So, the number of transistors and number of electronic devices were increased while keeping the area fixed, thereby the density of the microprocessor was increased. Am I clear? So, because of this technological breakthrough or development, we got every time in every the people usually say there is a revolution every 2 years. Every 2 years we got a new technology as far as the microprocessor and microcontroller is concerned. Until today also there is a large development in the microprocessor, and whatever the microprocessor you are seeing today, you will see that next year another microprocessor is launching to the market, but only the features are changing, and the features are is changing, and it is feasible because of the VLSI technology. More number of devices you can integrate into the same area of IC, integrated circuit, right. So, then people thought that let us again go for development. They again changed the microprocessor 80486 to 80586, and which they give a name called Pentium series of microprocessors. And all these developments, if you see the net, through the net you see or any book you see, they are all the gap between two microprocessors are maximum 5 years. All the development has taken place within 5 years. Am I clear? So, this due to this Pentium series of microprocessors, the digital computer speed has increased, and the memory which was used for the microcomputer also has increased, and how we shall see how the memory is related to microprocessor. It is not that we cannot arbitrarily use the size of the any size of the memory. They are completely dependent upon the microprocessor. Microprocessor is what you call better, then you can have more capacity, more memory capacity you can attach to that microprocessor. And we can see that if our microprocessor is efficient, it can have more number of devices interface to it, and they are all very logical and very concrete in nature, in the sense that there is a limit, we cannot go beyond this much of amount of memory whenever you choose a microprocessor. So, therefore, depending upon requirement, the people choose the microprocessor. But there is a strong revolution took place in Pentium, which was developed around 2010. Pentium series of microprocessors came between 2005 to 2010. The scientists they thought that instead of changing the additional features, they made most of the features whatever we are going to study that have become obsolete, and they made the 8058 series stagnant. Rather they thought that instead of focusing on these features, we should focus some more new architectural features without changing the basic concept. And since then the 586 remains stagnant, and only we are using the variants of the Pentium or 586. So, 2010 to 8, this last 8 years only we are seeing the variants of the microprocessor Pentium. But after 586 there is no new microprocessor developed by Intel, only a variance of the that means that the basic microprocessor is 80586, but with much more additional features which were not found in the last series of microprocessors. So, I can just give you a hint that there the concept of computer architecture came, and whatever you have studied in computer organization and architecture, those features were implemented and reflected in the Pentium series of microprocessors, and which was not usually focused till 586. Now, the question comes, what are the additional features which are not available previously, but available in 586. I just take I can give one example that in computer architecture we have studied. There is a concept called pipelining. That does not mean that pipelining was not introduced, it was introduced from 286 onwards. Till 8086 the concept was there, but 286 really felt how to take the advantage of pipelining. But this pipelining concept with multifunction pipeline, the advanced pipeline concepts, they were utilized in 586. Then question comes, what is advanced pipelining? I think whether you know or not, that is called super pipelining or superscalar architecture. So, these concepts were added, and we shall see how these are there, right. So, pipeline concept was there, but advanced pipeline concept was introduced in 5.8. That is one feature. Second, Pentium series of microprocessor also accepted sometimes the codes in high level language like codes. They did not stick to only assembly language codes. They thought of to make it more portable and more flexible for the high level language programmers. So, using high level language also it is possible to program Pentium. So, these are the second features. Then we shall see a number of features like operating system came to the picture. So, till 286 there is no concept of operating system, but all of a sudden in 386 most of the operating system features were integrated to the microprocessor. So, you may be asking what is the operating system features. So, what is the role of an operating system? It has to manage the memory, and it has to manage all the components of the microprocessor, and it has to manage all the I/O devices. It acts as a manager for personal computer. So, these management functions we shall see how they are integrated into the microprocessor hardware instead of keeping everything in software. And in the today's microprocessor, it is very difficult to define which is hardware and which is software. The software can be implemented using hardware, completely it can be an embedded system, full fledged. For example, washing machine. What is software there? Can you find any software there? But software is embedded into the microprocessor, right. Similarly, likewise you will see that most of the softwares nowadays they take the advantage of the microprocessors, and nowadays the operating systems are no longer monolithic in the sense they are not focusing on to the microprocessor, rather we are using the operating system concept as the applications, as in the form of tools, right. So, not, the definition of software and hardware has been changed now nowadays, which were implemented previously using hardware, now they are implemented using software, and which was previously implemented as software, they are implemented in hardware in the form of embedded system. The operating system is inbuilt in the fridge, in the TV. The operating system, the hardware, everything is inbuilt into a single unit and which you cannot change. And at the same time, if you see the personal computer, it is lot of flexible. Today I am loading Windows operating system, tomorrow I can I uninstall my Windows and I can install Linux, or today I am using one tool and tomorrow I can use another tool, and that I can get it from internet. So, all these flexibilities were added to the Pentium series of microprocessors. In that way, the microprocessor has become more powerful. So, anyway, do not you think that whenever these concepts were implemented in the microprocessor, it was a challenge for the designers of the microprocessor. How so many software concepts they have to integrate using a hardware, and whether this hardware is able to resist to process so many things in a very fast or efficient way, so that the users will be convinced. So, on this respect, one major drawback of the microprocessor is that whenever the load increases on the microprocessor or hardware, the heat is generated. So, temperature has become a major problem. So, every IC once upon a time it was designed for industrial environment, but nowadays most of the microprocessor is using a cooling arrangement. You can see that inside a computer, so there is a small fan. So, that is the main purpose is to cool it, and this you can feel whenever you do the laboratory class in microprocessor and microcontroller. If you use for 1 hour or 2 hours an IC, so you can see that after 1 hour if you touch your finger, it will be so much heated, and due to this heat what happens, the internal configuration, the transistors, they get shorted and that IC is damaged, right. So, these are all major problems because of the high density of ICs and more load to the ICs, and each and every component of the IC is functional continuously, right. So, these are all the major problems. You shall see what are the limitations of the microprocessors and what kind of load is given to the microprocessor. All these things are to be discussed in this course, right. So, to understand what is a microprocessor, let me come from the very simple concept, that is digital computer, right. So, all in the very first year class or in some subjects you might have studied that every digital computer has 3 units. One is called CPU, which stands for central processing unit, another is called memory, another side is called IO devices. Nothing else. Is there anything other than these 3 components? And this we call the block diagram of the computer. Of course, there must be a connection, and the connections may be unidirectional or may be bidirectional. But how to know that connection is unidirectional? If you are giving the data from keyboard to microprocessor or processor, then the connection must be one direction. And if you are printing in a printer, printer is an output device, and if you are displaying something on the CRT, an output device, therefore, it is unidirectional. But what about the communication between CPU and memory? Sometimes we read the data from memory and sometimes we write the data into memory. So, therefore, it is bidirectional, and this set of connections or set of wires, individual wires, we call it is a bus, right. So, this bus is the way or this is the hardware device which allows the communication between any 2 components in the microprocessor or computer. So, this is what I am telling about the block diagram of the computer, not block diagram of the microprocessor. Then what is microprocessor? So, microprocessor something similar to CPU, but certainly CPU cannot be called as a microprocessor. So, we have to clearly understand what is CPU and what is microprocessor, and sometimes I will use this notation mu p for indicating microprocessor. it is acceptable. Either you can write microprocessor completely or you can use mu p for microprocessor. So, suppose this is your CPU, we will come later to the memory and IO part, because the memory itself will take 2-3 classes. Unless you know the exact concept of memory system, it will be difficult to allow the communication between memory and a CPU, right. So, CPU, and we shall make it clear that what is CPU and what is microprocessor. You should not confuse between the CPU and microprocessor. So, CPU is a central processing unit. Inside that we have ALU, control unit, set of registers, that is all. What is ALU? Arithmetical logical unit, where we can do all arithmetical operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. In general I am telling, all CPUs cannot perform multiplication and division. And CU stands for control unit, which will control or monitor the activities that will be carried out by ALU, because basically it is a machine, it is not a human being. So, each and every activity must be recorded and tracked. Therefore, we need a control unit which is also responsible for generating a common clock signal, which is usually, in the most of the time, it is a square pulse like this. Suppose when I see my watch, I know that it is 1:15. In the same way, this clock is a continuous signal. So, which will be indicating that at what time we started the job and at what time we ended the job. Just find the difference between this T2 and T1, you can find out the exact time elapsed to perform an activity. So, this T2 and minus T1 we shall compute exactly, because as I told you, most of things are concrete. Either you have to express in terms of nanosecond or microsecond or millisecond or hour. So, that has to be concrete. Why? Because this each and every CPU is operated by a clock, and every clock has a frequency, right, and a frequency is the reciprocal of the time period. So, if you know the frequency, you can find out the time. For example, if I say that frequency is 5 megahertz, then what is the T? If f equal to 5 megahertz, T equal to 1 by 5, that is 0.2 microsecond. So, the reciprocal of megahertz is microsecond, the reciprocal of gigahertz is nanosecond, and the reciprocal of kilohertz is second, is not it? So, likewise there is a reciprocal. We shall solve a number of problems using this. We have to find out what is the delay. Suppose you are performing an activity using microprocessor, you can exactly find out how much time it took to execute a program, and that you can find out by executing, and that you can realize in the laboratory this is the exact time taken by the microprocessor to execute this particular program. But in high level language, what we are doing? You are connecting to the system time and finding the time. So, anyway, so this ALU and control unit, as you understand, these are the basic components of the CPU, and a register, a set of registers. So, register is also, it is not RESI STURs. There are two types of registers and both are equally important for us. So, one register which is the symbol is like this, you are using in the data communication laboratory or in the digital electronics or analog electronics laboratory. But here we are discussing about a register which is also one kind of memory and supposed to be the fastest kind of memory in the computer system, right. And what is the capacity of the register and how many bits you can store in the register and how many bits you can access from the register, these things will vary from microprocessor to microprocessor. And whenever we go to 8085 microprocessor, in context of 8085, we will try to address what is the location size and how many bits we can access. This will vary from microprocessor to microprocessor. Therefore, I am just telling in general n bits you can store, right. So, n bits we can store. So, n bits we can store means the location the size of the register is n. Am I clear? And every register is capable of storing a number of zeros, a group of zeros and ones. And when you store a 0 or 1, what is the corresponding device you should use? What is the corresponding electronics device or digital device to store 0 or 1? So, the device is that already you know in digital electronics a flip flop. And how many types of flip flops are there? We are not going to study about flip flop here, but certainly you should know how many types of flip flops are there and which flip flops are used for which registers. That is essential for us. For example, there are total 4 types of flip flop: RS, JK, D and a T. So, at any point of time you shall see we will make use of these flip flops to store a 0 or 1. Am I clear? So, that means if the n is the size of the register, how many flip flops I need? N flip flops. Is it okay? And we shall see that how these flip flops are arranged and synchronized to to store the data and to send the data to another register, because the number of registers has to be limited. Why? The size of the IC has to be limited. Size of the IC is to be limited, therefore, the number of registers must be limited. So, anyway, so register is the third component. Am I clear? Now, this ALU and a control unit and registers, if you keep inside a CPU and manufacture an IC, so that will become a microprocessor. If the same concepts whatever you are studying in CPU and they are available in a single IC, we call it is a microprocessor. So, functionally CPU and microprocessor both are same, but microprocessor is a chip IC. So, this need not be a chip. You can keep ALU in one part of the room and a control unit you can keep in another part of the room and registers I can keep in the middle part of the room, but still I can say it is a CPU, but I cannot say it is a microprocessor. So, whenever all these three units are fabricated into a single IC, we call it is a microprocessor. And to be more specific, when the digital computer came, so that time the total space occupied by the digital computer or ALU or control unit registers almost size of this room, the first computer when came to the market. Am I clear? So, control unit, ALU, they are all separated, but nowadays a number of microprocessors are also available in a single chip, that we call network of chips or we call system on chip, right. So, anyway, I think more or less you understood what is microprocessor. So, now whenever we open this microprocessor box, so we will find out ALU, CU and register. Now, one parameter you can observe here, what should be the size of the register? This question must be addressed, and what should be the size of the ALU? So, if I tell size of the register, the meaning is clear, but if I tell you what is the size of ALU, what is the meaning of that? Or is it possible to change the size of the ALU, or size of the ALU is different from the size of the register, right? Because as I told you, ALU is the responsible for performing addition in general, subtraction, multiplication and division. Even there are microprocessors they can perform exponentiation. Even there are microprocessors they can perform floating point arithmetic. These are all I am telling about the integer arithmetic, right. So, what are the logical operations? And, or, not, exclusive. And if you know these 4 gates, logic gates, I think almost all logical operations can be performed. I can perform an NAND operation also. If I mix NOT with AND, I will get NAND. If I mix NOT with OR, I will get NOR. Is it okay? So, these are the logical operations, but one thing is implicit here, not clearly mentioned, but still the operation is going, and that operation is performed using ALU. What kind of operation it is? Less than, greater than, less than equal to, greater than equal to, not equal to. These are called comparison operations. So, an ALU can perform these operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. These are the, in general these are capabilities, but all microprocessor cannot perform all operations, and we shall see that which microprocessor is capable of doing what operations. That is very important. You cannot write an instruction multiplication or division in 8085, right. So, therefore, you should know what kind of operation is supported by the microprocessor. So, anyway, suppose if I tell add, but what is to be added? Add is the operation to be performed. What is to be added? In the simplest way I can say one register R1, because I am using the mnemonics. As I told you, mnemonics is using mnemonics is more convenient than the using machine language, but ultimately it has to be converted to machine language. So, add R1 comma R2, what will you understand from this? So, R1 is a register and R2 is a register, both contents will be added together and the result will be stored in either R1 or in the either R1 or R2 in general. But as I told you, every microprocessor designed with a specific, its specification is very clear. The thing is that either it can be stored in R1 or R2 in general, that we have studied in computer organization architecture. But in microprocessor 8085, always the result will be stored in the left side, right to left. But if you go to Motorola series of processors, it is reverse, left to right. That means R2 will be the destination, right. So, but if since we are studying Intel series of microprocessor in the syllabus, so whatever microprocessor you read, always the result will be stored in the left side. But it is not that simple as we think. Sometimes the registers are implicit, here the registers are explicit. I will clearly mention that add R1 comma R2, but if I write add R2, what will be added with R2? There are some implicit registers, though you do not write, the ALU is connected to that. So, first you store the data into that register, and since it is automatically added, so this will be added to the R2 and the result will be stored where? The implicit register. So, these concepts slowly you shall see that how these are varying from microprocessor to microprocessor. If I write add R1 comma R2, then R1 content and R2 content both will be added together and the result will be stored in R1. And these operations they can be defined in a particular structure which you call instruction set architecture, ISA. For every microprocessor, so there is a called architecture, instruction set architecture. So, where all these instructions are defined, right. So, okay. So, now if I say that R1 is of 8 bits and R2 is of 8 bits, it is very clear. But if I tell R1 is 16 bit, R2 is 8 bits, is it possible? So, these are the questions you have to answer. So, if R1 content is 16 bit and R2 content is 8 bit, is the addition possible? Okay. So, these are the questions you should answer with respect to microprocessor. So, anyway, so here if your ALU cannot handle 8 bit operation, then the addition cannot take place. Your register size may be of 8 bit, but the ALU capability can be 16 bit also or 8 bit also. Is it okay? So, these are the this is what we call the size of the ALU, and next class we shall see how the size of the ALU and the size of the registers will decide the designation of the microprocessor. We say that there are 8 bit microprocessors, 16, these are the designation, 16 bit, or we say 32 bit, 64 bit, and 64 bit is the stagnant. After that there is no change in the designation of the microprocessor. So, the 64 bit microprocessor designation, it is the designation of Pentium series of microprocessors. Is it okay? So, next class we say in the that is I think in the Monday. So, Monday we shall see how this designation is very important, and designation means the size of the ALU and size of the register, and we shall see that size of the register need not be same as the size of the ALU. There we can we will be able to characterize the microprocessor in a better way as compared to CPU, once you know the designation of the microprocessor. And designation plays a very important role. That is the only parameter we can distinguish from one microprocessor to another microprocessor.